an arm like that, doesn't he?
Yeah, he puts his arm on the table, does he?
No, it's like that.
How is
with
it?
The back of the chair. And don't forget, the Adman cometh. I feel as if I'm being conspired against here. I'm Andrew Mate. I'm the founder and managing director of Admast. Many years ago, I started as an advertising sales rep at the Newcastle Chronicle and Journal. I worked there for nearly 10 years, and when I left, I was a Sunday Sun ad manager. I'd been approached by a number of retailers to act as their marketing manager, and I used that to launch my own agency in 1986. That agency I named Admast. When I first started work, I was a graduate trainee at British Steel, and I worked at Steelworks in Stocksbridge near Sheffield. But I soon decided that I didn't want to follow in the family tradition of working in steelworks, and I went off to make my own way in the world and ended up in advertising.
Got some questions in from our devoted Twitter fans, and this is a section we like to call Ask the Ad Man.
I can't believe I'm actually paying people to do this. And I'm allowing myself to be the victim of
So, yeah, turn around.
There have been changes over the last 30 years. I remember when free newspapers came into being in the early days of my tenure in advertising, and the way that the Chronicle and Journal restructured their offer to include free delivery newspapers. And they've been a big change. And other changes in the newspaper industry have been these free distribution newspapers like Metro in city centres. These were a revolution even when they first started. Again, early on in my career in advertising, the radio licence changed to allow commercial radio in this country. That was a massive event. And Metro Radio started within a couple of years of me starting up in advertising, back in the 1970s. Prior to that, there was no legitimate commercial radio in this country. It was all broadcast from abroad, like Radio Luxembourg. Without a doubt, it's the internet and everything that's brought with it. And in the last 2 or 3 years, the platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and all the social media that people now involved with. This isn't... What's the point of this?
So people get to know you.
Good question, that. Probably not any day soon. Pretty much like hospital food in this country.
Yeah.
You had to eat it, although you preferred not to. Power ballads. Well, it's not so grim. Cold it is, and we can't do much about that. It's cold, the climate. But grim, I wouldn't agree that it's grim. Well, good question. This is relatively new to me, although it isn't new to our social media marketing expert who's recently joined Admast. But I would say that it gets people talking about your brand and your company amongst your friends. It's a little bit like, to me, it's a little bit like an extension of personal recommendation. Well, that's a good question, and it's the sort of question that was asked about advertising 50 years ago in my youth. But basically, we wouldn't have the mass market consumer society that we have today if it hadn't been for advertising. And that's been manifest now for the last 60 years or so, from the dawn of the consumer markets in the 50s and 60s in this country. I wouldn't say that it's helped us, but on the other hand, I don't think it's been any hindrance. I think that all these types of marketing can work together and link together to bring people's perception of branding, and that you might have seen through all sorts of traditional marketing and offers that come out on traditional marketing. If people on social media then recommend them to you, and you've already seen offers, or offers have come through websites, it all works together to create your perception of the brand, your own perception of the offer, and you can judge whether or not it's the right time for you to buy or use that product. Obviously not.
Obviously not.
I think you get most of the money down there on false premises. Well, again, a very good question, one that has stretched advertising agencies throughout the years. Obviously, interacting with your fellow colleagues, with your colleagues in the agency, helps to create a dynamic in the agency. When somebody new comes to the agency, they change the dynamic, so that tends to make things fresh. You bounce ideas off people that you know if you want to test your ideas, and these days, of course, you can test your ideas amongst your online friends. I think what we've seen, if I can use an example of what's happening in the Middle East lately, of how powerful social media and traditional marketing can be used together to create something that was, well, in the Middle East case, regime change. So what happened there was they used the online social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook. They used mobile marketing in mobile phones, but they also used traditional leaflets and posters to carry that message through to the masses. So what we saw there was the public being in charge of the media instead of the government, and that's what helped to create the regime changes that we've seen in Tunisia, Egypt, and beyond in the Middle East. And I think that's why social media will never be the whole of the picture, and traditional media like printing can grow with it to create the bigger picture. I think I'll go back to my last answer in that one, and that as long as TV advertising delivers audiences, relevant audiences for the brand, then yes, it has got a future. Obviously, if TV audiences become insignificant, then its future is in doubt. But all indications are at the moment that TV audiences are being maintained.
Ooh, philosophical.
I've learned that people in advertising work hard, are generally cheerful, and try and be optimistic about life.
Oh.
And as a rule, we're a pretty good bunch to know. I'll just give you a bit of profile now. Obviously, there'll be more people getting involved in social media in terms of its management, monitoring, and using it creatively. And I think anybody who's been in advertising, who has the creative and communication skills that have put them in good stead in the past, will succeed in the new social media techniques of the future. Well, Rob, that question's made me think a bit. I think the language you use depends on who you're talking to. You change your advertising language depending on the consumer that you're aiming for. So if you're trying to sell something to school kids, you speak in one way. If you're trying to sell something to pensioners, you would speak in another way. And I think transparency and honesty always work the best, because almost invariably, if you don't tell the truth or if you exaggerate the truth, especially these days, you will get found out and you will damage the brand in the long run. And these days, with social media and people passing on their experience of using products between the friends and acquaintances through these new media channels, then you're going to get found out quicker than ever before. So I think in the future it's going to be more important that you're absolutely transparent and totally honest. Michael. What made you think of asking me that question? Perhaps I'm too old to have even noticed. I wouldn't describe us as hapless, but human nature hasn't changed that much, and the emotions that drive people to buy things are still deep within us. I haven't got any statistics on this. I don't even subscribe to Sky myself. Without a doubt, there has been some reduction in the amount of advertising people watch who are Sky viewers, but I think that other channels of receiving those ads haven't decreased. In fact, they're multiplying as we speak. So I think you'll have been bombarded by just as many of the advertising messages as you ever have been. In the future, product placement, which is coming into television as we speak, it's legal now, will find its way into television programmes, so it doesn't matter how much you Sky Plus things, you're still going to get products and brands put across. As I said, there are many more channels now where people can deliver their brand and product messages, like Facebook. So the fact that you managed to find a way around watching Sky's ads doesn't mean to say that you're not seeing these messages coming at you from other angles. I've had to work and the father's had to work, and there's no the father likes dear better than tinkle of brass in a little leather bag. If there ever does aught for note, all us do it for the same. Bollocks. Well, I'm going to have to go now. There's some campaigns out there to be won. The ad man cometh.